And welcome back to Radio Taiwan International. You're listening to Geek Out. What's your cup of tea, tickles your fancy, or floats your boat? Join us as we share passions from people in Taiwan and around the world. I'm your host, Michelle Chang, and today in the studio we have Naia and Sarah. Say hey, you guys.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going? Really excited to be here.
What are we geeking out about today?
Light, sound, music, and anything else.
Yeah, you mentioned that, who said it? It's like the two most...
I brought it up earlier when we were talking about, like light and sound, the most primal, the most important senses of the human experience.
Yeah. How did you get to be passionate about this particular subject?
For light, it started out as like a personal project. In the winter, when it's cloudy or rainy, I get sad.
Oh.
And that's actually an acronym for seasonal affective disorder.
I was just going to ask, yeah.
So I started playing around with LEDs, and I started building more and more LEDs and ended up putting them all over the walls and realized that they could be used for something. That started this journey into creating fixtures that could be used as sculptures or as lighting for events, raves, concerts, that type of thing. Music has been kind of like my heart and soul since the very beginning. I am...
Like from childhood?
Yeah, I played 4 instruments growing up.
Wow.
But I'm educationally a physicist and an engineer and a designer at times. But music has been the beating heart, if you will, that has stayed constant throughout these episodes of my life.
Well, they do say that music is structural, like mathematics.
No, don't talk about math again. I'm gonna have bad memories about failing algebra in high school.
Well, I actually think math is taught terribly in schools. It's like you're not learning math, you're learning numbers, you're learning arithmetic, whereas like math is poetry, math is art, math is expressive, but the language that we use to teach math is like from, maybe 5 people's brains who are treated as like the great minds of the subject, and those don't necessarily match with the learning styles or the languages that each of us naturally have. Yes. I always say that, learning should be fun.
Absolutely.
And schools should not be teaching rote memorization.
It is difficult for most people.
It's cultural trauma.
Yeah, and I am one of these kids who grew up hating math because it was taught in such a rigid, traumatic way that to this day I'm really bad at the subject. And like Sarah mentioned before, it's like, don't mention the math or I'm going to relive my childhood trauma.
Yeah. Like the one time I passed algebra was when I was like, if I don't pass this, I'm gonna flunk out of school. So I was like,
No.
I had to like study
Make
it, study
yourself.
really hard, but like I barely passed.
Ugh.
The teachers were fine, but like the material itself was just like drab and like rigid and structured and like not fun in any way at all.
A lot of Confucian culture teaches that there's like a way of doing things that is correct.
And that's that. Everything else is wrong.
And if you argue with that, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm. That is very much, I'm just going to lump this into a category. It's a very strong Asian school. It's not a stereotype if it's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us here can relate to like the amount of structure that presents itself whenever you're in like a Chinese system. Growing up in middle school or high school, you're in your most turbulent years, but that is when the most structure is introduced into the schooling system.
Yeah.
Everything is monitored. For example, like if there was even a hint of a relationship going on between like two like teenagers, parents will be called in. The 2 students will be grilled about their relationship, and it's like really traumatic.
That's
and
terrible.
Like, heaven help if the relationship was queer in any way.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, it would be like D-Day happened in high school or something.
And I can imagine the amount of trauma that the 2 people in question would experience.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially in those formative years. I think a lot of this is like, these patterns are not made for raising human beings necessarily. Yep. They're made for raising maybe robots on one hand or soldiers on another. Or
true.
robot soldiers, if
Robot
you will.
soldiers.
Yeah. And we're not robot soldiers.
We are not. But yeah, bringing us back to music, that is something that I think is today, especially, taught in many different methods.
Oh, yeah.
And it is fantastic. It's something that a lot of people are picking up even as hobbies, and a lot of people are getting very, very passionate about it. What do you do specifically?
Well, I work in music and building new systems for music distribution, but on the side, I have been a raver since my early years. When
I miss
I was
raves.
14, I discovered electronic music, and then I put down the piano, which I had played for 9 years, and I put down my guitar and all of the classical training and other instruments as well, because I realized that a lot of the ways that music is taught and learned is not necessarily music.
Yeah.
I mean, not everything falls in these. It's hard to paint with broad strokes,
Of course,
obviously,
of course.
but the analogy would be there's classical music and then there's jazz, right? And classical music is taught in some ways very Confucian ways. I'm
Yeah,
like,
right?
why is there the meme of
Yeah.
these
It's
like
very
Asian kids,
rigid. Yeah.
Very mathy ways.
Asian kids playing piano, right? Because there's some like,
I was one of those. I remember.
oh, are you?
Yeah, like we were all like the mandatory piano lessons, like starting from the age of like 6.
Totally.
It's 5
exactly.
or 6. Yeah.
Exactly.
So how did we get to this point where we're all trying to channel like some really old dead white dude's way of playing expression
Right.
when we're not that person and music's about expression?
Yeah.
Whereas, jazz, often there's a lot of focus on improv. And to truly do that, you have to be really in tune with, if you have co-performers, if it's just yourself, with how you're feeling.
Right.
If you have an audience, how the audience is feeling.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like you're kind of expressing that connection,
I've
whether
always
it's to yourself or others.
really envied people who can just create music if you give them an instrument and they know how to play it, because I was classically trained and I can only produce music if you give me sheet music to read. Right?
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
I've met so many people who are so musically talented. They could just be having a jam fest. There's no sheet music. Everyone's just playing the instruments together, and however they feel is whatever they produce, and that's amazing. And that is how, in my personal opinion, music should be.
But this is music as well in the abstract, this conversation.
Ah, true.
Like,
We
music
play
doesn't
off
have
each
to
other.
be like sounds in melodies that are played by an instrument. Music, I think there's some essence of expression there that
Yes.
can transfer across many things that may not be literally like an MP3. Creating music, I think, is more about playing with that connection with yourself and others than anything else.
Yeah.
Right? And as long as that's there, then it's got the same shape as music, even if you don't call it that. So, but back to the analogy, I think that when I was learning to play the piano, I wasn't learning music. I was learning arithmetic,
Right. A formula.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered the dance music scene where it's like, it's dark. The performers, I don't know them. They're playing songs that I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know anyone else in the audience. Sometimes it's foggy and I can't even see anyone else,
Yeah.
And you just like move how
You want to.
you want to.
Yep.
Or how you need to. And that is healing, to be in that space with yourself and with others in and of itself.
Yeah.
That's how I got into music. And
Yeah.
kind of it's been the heartbeat, if you will. Nope. I guess pun intended.
I did mention earlier that I miss raves. They tend not to happen very often in large format as I was familiar with them in the U.S. In Taiwan. And I have outed myself in previous episodes. I am not the youngest, and it's been a long time since I've been someplace very loud. But in my youth, when I discovered the rave scene, it was so different than just clubbing.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of judgment when you're in a club. How do I explain this? Everyone is looking at everybody else's, like their fit, like their hair, their makeup, and then how they dance.
The dance moves.
Right?
Yeah.
Your dance moves will be judged at a club. Whereas when I stumbled upon the rave scene, dragged into it by a friend, that's usually how it goes, right? The lack of judgment, the freedom was so refreshing. And I do really wish that we're more prominent over here.
Yeah, I have thoughts.
Please, thoughts.
I think that is, one, cishet trauma, but also two, just political trauma. It's also misogyny,
Oh, yes.
fundamentally, that is distorting something that was never meant to be the medium for those types of interactions, without getting too much into like gender identity and social context thereof. Whereas like, raves originally, at the very least, like the DJ wasn't even at the center of the stage. A lot of the scene came from queer communities of color in Chicago and Detroit because people needed a space to gather. Dance music in and of itself is fundamentally from a lot of communities that didn't have space to be in normal society.
Right.
The first synthesizer was invented by a trans woman. I think that DNA has been lost in a lot of places. Here, it always kind of was a question to me why there is so little music in Taiwan. I'm used to walking around the streets, whether it's in California or on the East Coast of the US, and just hearing music, and this is true for many other cities.
And let me clarify for people who have experienced Taiwan's streets, we're not talking about like store jingles. There's a little bit of audio. It's usually, as I said, jingles or a little bit of maybe K-pop or something like that occasionally. But if you compare it to walking down the street in California, or I hail from Boston, almost every storefront has something playing. And there's also a lot of street performers out and about. And you're moving us through a soundscape, which is much more noticeable than in here. So.
Yeah, I sometimes I go online and I'm like looking up things about Taiwan because part of my family is born here, but I grew up in the U.S. and I'm kind of like familiarizing myself with like how to do things in Taiwan. And I see so many posts about why is Taipei so loud? And I'm like, this is the quietest city I've ever been in.
Oh, you've not been in
What are you talking about? Yeah. Right. And that's always kind of mystified me because fundamentally, and I can speak to dance music, music is healing. Like those low frequencies, many of them map to specific frequency bands in your brain that are active in deep restorative sleep. I can talk about that in detail as well, but there's so much fear, I think, in a lot of East Asian cultures of sounds. And the ideal almost feels like the ideal is like sitting there quietly doing nothing.
In a quiet room.
It's like, hey, you're going to watch this, you're going to listen to this, basically learn everything that's put in front of you in a very, very structured and no-nonsense sense where a lot of the people here are kind of, well, maybe it's a bit rude to say, like, again, not to paint with broad strokes, but Taiwanese people that, have grown up their whole lives in Taiwan have been stifled by this kind of really, really structured way of growing up.
100%.
And in that sense, they haven't really seen what's possible like out there, or they haven't experienced it, even though they might have seen it on a YouTube video, for example. But in a sense that if they were kind of take a peek on the other side, as they say, and be shown, listen to things that, may not be pre-approved by their parents, I think there's going to be a lot of life happening in Taiwan as well.
Yeah, it almost feels like people read, Zen Buddhism and took it literally, right? Where
that's actually the best way I've heard it put.
Yeah, like, sit and be still and enjoy the silence. But sitting is not necessarily literal. As I'm speaking, I'm sitting here in the present and my mind is quiet, but my mouth is speaking, right? And that's very different. And I think that in the literal interpretation, that's death to me. It's like there's no difference between a lifeless rock in space and, sound is, I think a lot about sound these days. I think that, with good sound, at the very least, if you go to a club that is intentionally created as a space for dance music, it's going to be very different from like a nightclub, I was talking to a friend the other day. We were in front of a pretty decent sound system. We had a conversation about how one way to like explore and understand like the setup of a place is to just talk to each other on the dance floor. And can you understand each other? Do you have to raise your voice to hear what the other person says? Because it's not just like, oh, this is noisy, this is not. There's high notes and there's low notes, and many systems and many tracks have a bit of a gap in the frequency bands. And your brain will kind of like automatically adjust the pitch of your voice to be higher or lower to find that gap.
To find the gap so you can be heard and if hear others.
If it's tuned well, then the music could be so loud that you can hear it blocks and blocks away, but you don't even have to raise your voice. Like maybe not right in front of the speakers, but on the dance floor.
That is absolutely the way that it should be done. I have been in very many bad clubs. With bad tuning. It's like, what?
Can't hear nothing in here.
Can't hear nothing.
Yeah, and like one analogy that I can draw to lighting is, there was a comment that you made about the overhead lighting. I don't know if you remember.
I have to tell people, okay, so listeners can't see, but when we sat down in here, our studio has these bright, very cold white, kind of fluorescent-y LEDs overheads, right? And she saw our videography or photography lights in the corner, and she said, "Oh, can I create ambient lighting using that?" I'm like, "Sure." So we're sitting in a dark studio, but with these two photography lights in the corners creating quite a nice glow. And I did mention that I frequently get headaches. The overhead lights are not the most conducive to me anyway. And that's when you were going to make a comment.
Absolutely. I guess the connection that comes to mind is like in nature, when is there light shining directly down?
Noon.
Midday.
And
Yeah.
that's
Midday,
it.
yeah.
And, you know, all of the animals and people are hiding from the harsh sun.
Yeah,
So
generally.
why is it that we replicate the least bearable moments of the day in our homes? Like, who thought about this?
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like really weird about really bright white lights in the house, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, I want warmer lights," and my parents going, "Why though?"
If I were told that I need to learn math and the lights are shining down overhead, I would be like, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go into the shade.
Uncomfortable.
But with this ambient glow, you know, when is there ambient glow? Well, sunrise, sunset, by a campfire.
Yeah.
You know, these are moments of safety or magic
Yeah.
where people are like gathering. Right?
And it is
And
calming and soothing and
Yeah.
comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
where I would be like, I could just sit here and like think about math instead of feel like a deer in headlights. Right?
Oh, I definitely
Yeah.
felt that. Ugh.
These simple things are kind of interconnected, but that's the example that I would draw to sound as well, where it's like there's a strong difference between loud sounds that are not intentional and loud sounds that are intentional and have been a mode of healing and gathering and the creation of not just community, but strength in community, care of community
Yeah.
for a really long time. Listening to like some of my Taiwanese friends talk about the loneliness and the isolation in society here, my mind started being drawn to the need for spaces that have intentionality
Yes.
around.
That was actually the exact word I was thinking. Intentionality. Is that an actual word? I hope it
Yes,
is.
absolutely.
Good.
It is. Yeah.
Because everyone should, as they grow, as they improve themselves as humans, being more intentional with their actions, their thoughts, their whatever they're doing should be more intentional. And as you said, if people were to create spaces that are intentional with their design, regardless of whatever purpose it is, then those spaces would be much more useful than a lot of the whatever spaces that are out there. But please
But
tell
our
us.
education systems are, whether it is intentional or not, you know, expressly created to remove the need to do the effort of thinking about intentionality. Why am I learning this? Doesn't matter. It's in the textbook. When am I going to use this? Doesn't matter. How am I going to use this? Doesn't matter. Just learn it because this is
Learn to pass
how
the test.
this is how you become an adult. This is how you're measured. This is how your life is determined.
Yep.
The muscle of intention is a type of awareness, if you may, in the same vein as awareness in meditation or mindfulness practices,
Yeah.
of being aware of like, what is my intention here? Is it mine? Am I transmitting the intention of another person? Am I transmitting the intention of a system? Or am I transmitting the intention of me?
Myself,
right? And
yeah.
those are very, very different, and it's important. And all of those things are valid. I'm not saying that, oh, I'm transmitting the intention of a education system in telling my child to do homework or telling my friend to study, like, is a bad thing. But it can be damaging. In fact, I would even say is more often damaging than not if there's not the awareness of that intention and where
Yeah.
it's coming from.
Yep. So, for listeners who would like to find your projects or spaces that are more intentional, how might they?
For now, if you're trans, come to Trans Bar.
Okay.
It's every Friday at New Bloom.
New
in the
Bloom.
in the evening.
Yeah, it's near the Wanhua district. It's very easy to find. Just Google Daybreak and you'll see it. It's every Friday evening, like starts at around like 7-ish.
Okay.
And ends about like 11. It's a very chill space, very welcoming, and there's no like obligation to do anything at all. You can just head there and sit down, absorb the environment, and
Be intentional.
yeah, again, it's called Trans Bar, the event itself, but it's like a very welcoming space for like all sorts of people. It's more marketed towards queer people in general, but I think anybody who feels like societally like outcast or even just lonely will find a good space there to just like hang out and chill like after work on a Friday evening.
Yeah, our project does not yet have a public presence. We are working on bringing back the healing culture of free parties.
Yay.
And in that process, we're looking for spaces,
Yeah.
right? Whether it is outdoors or indoors.
I'm excited then.
Keep an eye out for our parties. We will have some sort of presence at some point.
Yeah,
But if you have suggestions for those spaces, ideas that come to mind, and how to make them safe, if you shoot Michelle a message, then we'll get in contact.
Please. Yeah. I'm then super excited to have you on again after things have developed. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for geeking out with me, you guys. That was Naia and Sarah. And thanks, listeners, for tuning into Radio Taiwan International. I'm Michelle Chang, and I'll be back next Thursday with another episode of Geek Out. Bye. I hope you're being mindful and intentional. For Naia's choice of song for this episode, we have Politics of Dancing, Swirls.